All right, we are live. Welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. This is Rapid Fire, where I answer your burning questions. I'm your host. Sorry about that. I'm Ed Raby, your host, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. So, welcome to my channel. Um, I really rely on the questions of others for this particular show. I'm a little bit more lenient with the theists on this one, so my mods can note that because I need questions and I need things to react to. So it's kind of this has been an experiment. I like the idea. But I'm exploring a topic that I'll probably do a video for tomorrow. I was going to do a couple reaction videos, but I think I'm going to hold off. I think once I get past the research I'm doing for the Charlie Kirk video, which is slowing things down, because he's so wrong on so many things. I did that reaction a month ago, but it's like, um, I don't know. I want to, I guess, look at a topic that's been bothering me for a while now. Is why um, they're so evil. Oh yes, I know. I love Damnation. He's really good. I catch him every once in a while in the morning, so he's kind of fun. But this is more of my open forum kind of live stream than Saturdays I react to a video, and Thursdays is purely deconversion, and I keep the theists out of that room. So, but this one's more my open forum one. That's what Rapid Fire is all about. So, but I've been struggling with a question as to why presuppositionalist apologetics is becoming more and more popular, even in the mainstream, because I've heard several mainstream apologists kind of use presuppositionalist arguments. And I'm trying to figure out why that is, because when I was being developed as a minister back when I was in seminary and Bible college in my first years as a minister, presup apologists were kind of on the bottom rung of the ladder. They existed, but they were kind of dismissed by other apologists because other apologists felt that there was like how shall I say it, that they were kind of lowbrow because they didn't really offer answers. As Martin points out, precepts are kind of easy because if you just presuppose certain things without having to prove them, or we're all grounded in this and that comes from our faith, or we're all this, it becomes very easy to do presuppositional apologetics. And the problem with like old time apologetics is they were really genuinely looking for rational reasons for their faith. And there were a lot more archaeological questions that were still in doubt. There were a lot more historical questions that were still in doubt. And over time, I guess I've seen a lot of those answers and questions become dismissed. Okay. And more it's becoming hard to maintain a rational, historically based Christianity or any of that. And so that's kind of where I ended up, realizing that that's not working. And so I can understand precept from a certain point of view, in the sense that it does involve some sort of easy answers because you just basically, if stupidity is persistent enough. Good to see you, Jova. Appreciate you being here. But it does represent what I would say is an easier form of apologetics if you just presuppose certain of your beliefs are true without having to defend them. And it all stems from this idea that, well, we all use rationality, we all use logic, these are all the, the groundings of human knowledge. Now, a lot of presuppers will say that comes from my faith. And like, no, but you got to prove that. It starts to be like I don't want to have to defend like the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I'm just going to presuppose it. I mean, and this is where this kind of leads, because then their main method of apologetics is attack, to attack, like me, the atheist. So come up, prove your atheism. I'm like, I don't believe in God. How do I fucking prove that other than to say I don't believe in God? Um, it is the way it becomes the tactics that I found. Like, I think in my series, if you go to my playlist where I deal with Jim Bob, my last video is about how I find this very dishonest, because basically you're saying, I don't have to prove my points, but you have to prove yours against mine. Okay. And I don't know. Yeah, there's some repetitious elements to this, Martin. I would agree with you there that if you repeat something long enough, it gets believed. Um, yeah, that's the thing. And I'm probably going to do a video on this tomorrow. I'm going to put my thoughts together on why I think presuppositionalist apologetics is rising. And and I think part of the reason is the emotional connection to faith allows, if you don't want to rationally defend something, you can just say, I presuppose this because I'm connected to it. It's an easy out. Um, so, yeah, I think you got a point there, Rimmer. Um, Mainstream conspiracy theories are definitely out there, and there's a rise in them too. And I think it's this notion of people want to believe certain things and they don't want to prove it anymore. Okay. I think the atheists have finally gotten to the apologists where we keep saying prove it, and now they're just trying to come up with a reason why they don't have to. Okay, they're trying to, yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. I don't think they're attacking me. They're not going to win me back. It's a bad, lousy tactic, and that's why presuppositionalist is going to fail. Eventually, some of them are going to realize, hey, you know what? This doesn't actually win us converts. It just kind of makes us look, inbred. Like we don't want to really deal with the issues. It really does make you look a little bit cowardly, to be honest. It's that sort of thing. It's always easier to accept wrong or bad things if you don't use your brain. Yeah, the more something is repeated, the more. Yeah, the thing is, we are kind of conditioned as a survival mechanism to look at bad things, and in a social context, evolutionarily speaking, gossip arises because we want to know who's on our side in the tribe and who isn't, and who to trust in and who not to. And so it's easier for us to believe bad stuff than good stuff. So, yeah, good to see you, angry asshole. I know you're not really angry, but thanks for stopping by, man. Martin says to keep the rage. All right. Yeah, that's another part of presuppositionalism, is because if there's certain ideas that are needed to support the presupposition, even though they're not stated in the Bible, these people will do that. Okay, like in our case, in our discussion the other day, you got this person believing Lazarus wrote the book of John, and there's nothing stated in anywhere, not even among early Christianity, that that's the case. But it fits a lot of problems. There's, what is it? Huss comes out, and Apologia just did a video about him. It's like John proves John. It's like, no, that's not the way it works. Okay, yeah, it's very lowbrow apologetics because they just want to. Well, we've said this for centuries, so it must be true. Um, but in the case of Lazarus being John, I have always taken the theory. I think the most valid theory about who wrote John is it's somebody that if we knew their exact identity, it would either discredit the work because of prejudice. I This disciple whom Jesus loved is described as somebody leaning against Jesus's breast. Okay, that sounds like a lover. And there's two possibilities. Either Jesus was gay and wanted to keep that on the down low, or it's one of the women that used to hang with him was his lover. And the early Christian can't take that. And so, all of that stuff. So, yeah, it's either Mary Magdalene or he's gay. Yeah. Okay. And my money's on Mary Magdalene. And if Mary Magdalene was the one who wrote this, I would actually like to authenticate it. But it's really an unknown quantity. It's okay, yeah. So I love you, man. So, um, but yeah, yeah. Please hit the buttons. I appreciate that. Asshole reminds me to do all the things I'm supposed to do as a YouTuber. But to me, my money is Mary Magdalene or one of the disciples, and Jesus was homosexual, and there's a lot of things. I mean, when you look at who wrote the book of John, it's not stated. It's why I constantly make reference of the idea that these gospels are anonymous. You have one guy, 60, 70 years later saying Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote these gospels, but he doesn't really tell us where he gets his information specifically. It's been the tradition of the church. Well, so what? Okay, that doesn't mean it's true. And so, yeah, or bi. Yeah, he could have been bi. I mean, he has 12 disciples. I don't know what Jesus was into, but maybe he's like variety. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, in that context, homosexuality is condemned by the Old Testament scriptures, so they would have had to keep that on the down low, which is another good reason to make the gospel writer anonymous. I mean, the best theory about the Gospel of John is that it's a community that was rallied around this disciple who Jesus loved, who is unnamed. And out of that community, some sort of editor in the 2nd century started collecting the stories and putting them together. And it explains why Jesus is such a superhero, because after 100 years of telling the tales get, collar on down the line, as the old song says. And so there's a lot of things back then that you could have covered up, but for some reason they don't want to name who the disciple is that Jesus loved. And it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if there's something controversial about that decision. Yeah. I mean, any of them. Yeah. There's actually, when I was in seminary, one of my mentors off campus that I hung out at his house a lot, we had that discussion because I was under the understanding that rabbis, official people that had the title rabbi, which Jesus does in a couple of the texts, had to be married. Okay. They had to have a wife. And which kind of carries over into, like Paul's pseudo letters, where he says, bishops and deacons need to be the husband of one wife. And there was this idea that religious leaders were supposed to be married. I said, wouldn't have Jesus have had to been married? And my mentor, who was a pretty deep Bible scholar, kind of looked away at that moment and said, well, maybe that's why Mary Magdalene is mentioned so prominently. Okay, is maybe she was the wife of Jesus, and so there's that. Maybe eunuchs were not. That's a Catholic thing. The Jews don't really have a eunuch idea in them. Yeah, this is the common scholarly theory, is that John was written by a group, in a sense that we had all these different peoples have stories about Jesus, and then we had like a compiler editor that put them together and put them in order. It's why like the cleansing of the temple appears in the 2nd chapter. It's like they started out first with the book collecting stories, and then later, well, maybe we should put some chronological order to this stuff. So yeah, maybe. You guys have it up. Well, welcome, Evan. Appreciate you being here. That's okay. The discussion has been on, Jesus's, was he gay or was he married to Magdalene or what? So, was he married to his work? Yeah, I suppose that's true. And that could be true. That could be. Uh, Something similar would have existed. They did have like official teachers in their synagogues that I think had that title of rabbi. I don't know if it was that particular title or that's a translation, but they did have like an official system. The synagogue systems are quite well known to extend back to like the 2nd century BC. So, um, Yeah, this is another reason why they think it was written by a committee. Is there is slightly variations in the Greek style. So, um, it. I don't know if he's woke. Love your neighbor is such a general statement. Uh, hey, Michael, across the pond, huh? It's a big pond. That is also, remember, that's also a possibility. This is the problem with a lot of things in the Gospels is we have a lot of conjecture. I used to have a Christian commentator. He hasn't shown up for like a month or so now on my Questionable Witnesses series. And it's because I plain out, flat out told him, I said, yeah, you're yelling at me that you can't accept what I'm saying because it's conjecture and speculation. While at the same time, you're doing conjecture and speculation about what you believe. And since that discussion, I haven't seen him. Okay. It's like, if you want to say that like Luke got his sources from Mary, I said, that's conjecture and speculation. We don't know that for sure. Okay. So if you're going to reject my conjecture and speculation because you don't believe it, then I can reject yours. And it's like, or we can accept the fact that there's a lot of conjecture and speculation when it comes to the Gospels, and that's the problem. Um, it's it's one of those things that really I try to get across to people in that series is that there's so much stuff that we're just guessing on, and it's an inherent problem with the Gospels. Okay, it the moment you think you know something, somebody else comes with an alternative theory. You know, I, I've been watching like some apologists and their reaction to apologias, like minimal witness theory over the years. And that's an inherent, he's just, it's funny because they're all attacking, well, that didn't happen. That there's no way that could exactly have happened. But Apologia has never said in his theory that this is what he thinks actually happened. He just says, this is a naturalistic explanation that fits the facts. Okay. So to say that there's only one possible answer, the resurrection is myth. And he's right. Okay. Yeah, it's not that it happened, but it could have happened that way. And it would cover all the bases. So that's kind of what I get at with people is there's so many alternatives with the gospels and different ways of doing it, including um let's see, including what Rimmer is saying. Rabbi meant somebody who could read and write. Later, I've learned that learning by heart and didn't involve literacy. Some to do it in Islam. Well, you learned it in confirmation. So first of all, I'd be very skeptical of that. I've looked at confirmation curricula, and it's like, man, this is really indoctrinative because they really avoid. But yeah, the synagogue leaders did have titles, so and they still do. So the old Bible is wriggling about the rules. I think Old Testament was against men having sex with other men, like with the women. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Eh, yeah. Okay. The real problem is there's like 4 or 5 death penalty offenses, and homosexuality is one of them in the Old Testament. Later on, we get this whole idea of grace. And if you're going pure Bible without thinking about it, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. I any questions, you just have to keep yeah, you have to keep going. And as I was kind of pointing out, the Strong's thing, which is, apparently the Strongs and their editors have come to the conclusion that means a title of a teacher. And I would say that that's probably the full scholarship. But if you learn something in confirmation, question it. Okay, it's probably wrong. Confirmations are very much about making sure you believe and know the right things to have your faith. They're not interested in a deep dive of all the interesting things. So I mean, if I've shattered another one of your illusions about about your faith, Rimmer, I guess it's okay. Yeah, they talk about the death and resurrection and all that stuff. Hey, Anne Marie. Good to see you. Well, yeah, and that I I go for it because I'm fairly certain the whole thing that they talked about rabbi is they wanted to dismiss the rabbis as being the actual ones with learned faith. But we have good evidences of Hebrew writing. The Dead Sea Scrolls give us that, and they're just an offshoot community. There was a lot of writing going on uh, in Jerusalem. We'll just put it that way. I mean, not as much as you would think because paper is expensive and ink's expensive back then. It's equivalent to buying a computer and all the server to serve it. So, I am man and why it is. In fact, there should not be ignored to fix these problems and not pretend they don't exist. Yeah, I I don't see the thing with Jesus is the way he's presented in the Gospels. Now, I agree that he might be complete myth and fabrication, which means there's a mythology here that's being covered up too, a controversial part of the mythology that Christians believed that they wouldn't put in John because they're concealing who the disciple who Jesus loved is. And it is very possible that, all the renditions of Jesus being a hippie like guy that kind of cut against the grain socially in other ways might be true. Um, that might be a depiction by the early Christians. The early Christian sects in the first and second century are pretty weird. Okay, there are a lot of weirdos. So yeah, you could do that. So all right, and we got Lyric here, but he's driving. So well, Nazarene. Well, but Nazarene is a title of where he lived in Nazareth. There is a town called Nazareth, and that's probably more reference to that. Um, it, I never maintained that he was a Nazarite vowist person, but he is called rabbi by his critics. Like he's given the official title rabbi by his critics, which indicates that he had the credentials in some way. He's also in the story allowed to read the Torah, which was only given to people that they felt they could trust to do it and touch the scrolls and all that jazz. So he wouldn't have been allowed to do that unless he had some sort of official creds of the time. It doesn't take much to have official creds. If you could, the average human being today knows tons more than the ancient person. So yeah, slightly used burn pariahs from the title. Yeah, that word is debated too. See, you guys are giving me all the speculation all the time and the conjecture. Every one of these things that you're bringing up, you need to realize there's another theory. But the word carpenter there could very well be contractor. In other words, he built houses. Okay, that was what he does. Teclon isn't quite carpenter. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, it's too bad. I do like the idea though. Iron Age IKEA, yeah. Explains the holes in his hands and feet. You guys are in winning form tonight. I appreciate that. Uh, yeah, the thing about Nazareth as a town, it is very small. The other notable feature is it doesn't have a hill, and never has. So when the town of Nazareth tries to run Jesus off a hill, we're all wondering what hill they're using. So um, that's another example of the writer not knowing about the area. It really, the Gospels have the feel of people putting together stories, but they didn't know the history as well as they should have. They didn't know the towns as well as they should have. So these are outsiders that are just collecting stories, things like that. Yeah, if he was bad at his job. Yeah. Yeah, it really, that's the thing. You're so, that's a really good analogy because I really like, even Luke seems to admit this, that he's just trying to put some sort of order to all the fan stories about Jesus. And that's the problem because it's so, all the gospels are so fan fictiony. Like you have a very good analogy there. It's like they're pulling, like I said yesterday in my video, it's like Matthew is pulling the out of the oral tradition what he wants. He's editing out stories that could have been there, okay, and doesn't use them. He only uses the oral traditions that he wants, or he's straight up making shit up, okay, because he's a fanboy too. I don't know. I just, I don't, it really is a good analogy because a lot of the gospels are just people collecting the stories. And Mark, he's like has the most down to earth Jesus there is, which, even he has his miracles and stuff, but, there's no birth narrative. There's no real resurrection story either. And so probably closer to the truth than the rest of them. But it's like all these writers are just collecting different things and putting it together. They're not really trying to be historians. They're just trying to put together an ordered narrative. So, yeah, of Nazareth. Yeah, it's more of an of Nazareth. Yeah, Mark got something wrong too. I mean, every gospel writer gets something wrong. So there's that. Walmart before they expanded. That hits close to home, Martin. It does. Yeah. Yeah. The thing about it is that is such a general word that it's hard, but everybody likes the myth of him being a carpenter. It's almost as if it's mythological. Yeah, imagine that. Jesus. Having spent some time in Texas, I can appreciate the humor of that lyric. So, yeah, I would probably go that far too. It's people collecting the stories of Jesus, who was their favorite character at the time. Everybody had their favorite mythology, I guess, and Jesus just happened to be one of them. Um, and people say, "Oh, you can have those kind of outlandish stories that soon." And it's like, have you been paying attention to the human race? We can come up with a story about any event that's completely fictional within 10 minutes. So, I don't know. Yeah, I'm stretching it, Martin. Okay, I'm stretching it. But of the four, he is the most down to earth. Most has a more human Jesus. John has Jesus is better than Superman. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of talking stuff, and with the Gospels, you have a lot of that too. Like the walking on water is a common one in most and good a chunk of the Gospels, but the stories vary. So it's like, okay, no, you don't. You can believe that Jesus was a real person, and then they added a whole bunch of bullshit to his life. I can see like a rabbi carpenter type, you know, guy who's, in the synagogue who suddenly gets an idea and decides to think that he's the Messiah. And then later on, you know, he gets crucified. And then, I'm sorry, Apologia makes a very valid point. All you need is one or two people to see like these post death hallucinations are common. Like 1 out of 10 people has them of their departed loved one, and that's all you need to get this kind of mythology growing. And then just people add to the story and add to the story and add to the story, and away we go. Okay, now we have all these gospels, and we have. I mean, it's funny because we always talk about the four, but geez, oh Pete, you know, I remember when I was in seminary, I couldn't move too far without tripping over another gospel of Jesus that wasn't the four. Um, well, the deportation will be challenged because people are challenging. See, Trump is of the notion that he can do things unilaterally. He's going to find out that even from his own party, that's not the case. He found that out last time, but he had to learn it the hard way. Apparently, he hasn't learned. So, and valid. woodworker cosplayed as a messiah for laughs. Barabbas. Well, people. I mean, I like fiction too. I mean, yeah, the bar is so high that he is floating. Yes. Okay, but there are other gospels that only have like the teachings of Jesus. Like they don't have any narrative; they just have his teachings. Well, maybe there was a guy who had those teachings. I mean, that's very easy to believe. It's like it's not. There's no miracle about it. So I can, when you put the gospels out there and you start looking at them, you can see this growing, extending legendary narrative. And apologists who want to deny that, they've never really looked at it. They just never have really looked at it. Yeah. Yeah. By the time John writes, yeah, the doctrines of Christ and who Jesus was had come a long way. Okay, they had changed. It's a very, as we'll say, very human thing to do. We like to tell stories. Yeah, that's the funny part. Oh, yeah, you could have a real Jesus and have fan fiction about him. So, I mean, I'm atheist carpenter. Oh my god. No, you don't want me to touch anything mechanical. That's a good way to have it further broken. So, I have never been skilled with any kind of technical stuff like that. Um, Rabid Rabbi Carpenter. Oh boy, this is why I keep these people around to keep me entertained. Yes, you're going to get ice moving around. The problem is all they've really done is create more legal paperwork, and a judge already declared his one executive order of birthright citizenship unconstitutional, which it blatantly is. The 14th Amendment says if you're born here, you're a citizen here. Okay, you have to change the Constitution to do something like that. So that's challenged. So, and done. I don't see a court. They're going to probably try to appeal it, but I don't know if it's going to get any farther than that. Because I think the next judge will look at it and say, yeah, it's blatantly unconstitutional. The guy made the right call. So, it's that's the thing. It's Trump testing the boundaries again. He did this before. So, um, eh, it's everybody had their own pet zodiac, so we will never know. Like I've said, the Monty Python scene with all the messiahs, closer to reality than we like to think. It's not just humor. It's a pointing out a fact that at that time there's a lot of reports of a lot of messiahs. And I do not dismiss the notion that Jesus could be a conglomerate, like somebody took all these messianic stories and suddenly they all become Jesus and then they all put them together. It's very possible. Yeah, it I like that because you have a cross golem, it's like like an automaton, something brought to life by magic. I thought that part was cool from a writing standpoint of view. From somebody who writes fiction, outstanding. Yes, one of my favorite lines. He's a messiah, and I should know. I followed a few. So, the Rabbit Carpenter. Oh gosh, you guys are going back to me and BS. I had a great time with BS. By the way, that was a great live stream. I had a good time with him. We laughed. You know, I don't know. See. Here's the thing. I would take the Monty Python rabbit as my symbol. I could do that. You know. Oh, it's just a little bunny. Forget the teeth. Sharp, pointy teethies. So Yeah, I can do that. So, oh man. Oh, I don't know if you're my ant farm. No, huh? Yes, jokes about touching wood incoming. Yeah, I mean it happens. I mean it's a strange world that we live in. But I remember when BS showed me the thumbnail, I'm like, okay, that's just way too funny not to allow. So, but I had a good time on that show and the whole rabbit thing because I put on closed captioning, and sure enough, I won't quite enunciate rabid quite enough, and it'll come out rabbit in the thing, and so it's like, and so it's been kind of a undercover joke about my name for a long time, so I'm good with it. But yeah, well, the thing is, I've been paying attention to what the Republicans are doing internally, and they're fighting. Okay, it's happening just like it happens every time one party gets all the control. The minor factions in the party start to come to play, and they don't agree with each other. And I mean, I haven't seen any legislation proposed by Congress yet that's worth a shit that's going to get anywhere. So, yeah, keep adding stuff. Yeah, you rescind it. Um, I don't know. I have if I have problems with circumcision of kids, I kind of have a problem with parents kind of forcing what gender they want on the kid. Seems to be a decision that you should make as an adult. So, and not let your parents make it for you. Yeah, I think that's why I kind of hold that. I don't get me wrong. I will give the mythicists their due. I absolutely think that they have a valid point that Jesus could be a completely made up character. And the reason I say that is because even if he is like this central rabbi figure that was really existed, almost everything about him now that we know is mythology. Like everything is 95% of it is mythology around the character. Okay. And it's not, it's not his real life. And so there could have been a real Jesus of Nazareth, but, you know, who he really was is lost in the mythology. So there's that. Uh, yeah. And I'm the same way, Evan. I'm very tentatively in both camps. So because it's hard to draw a conclusion based on what we have. And it doesn't really matter. The real issue of Christianity, the thing that it hinges its hats on, is Jesus walked out of that tomb alive after being dead. Everything hinges on that. And there is way too little evidence for that to be okay. The Bible tells me so, is what you get. Well, we can trust the Gospels as history. No, no, you can't. I couldn't even get past the mention of the census by Augustus before realizing that there's some historical problems with the Gospels, particularly Matthew. Matthew is really bad, but the others have bad problems too. So, yeah, it's more. Yeah, that's the thing. You're doing a medical procedure without the consent of the child. Okay, and can a child of that age legitimately consent? I mean, that's the argument I make about circumcision. Why doesn't it equally apply to any other medical procedure to a child that changes their nature? So, no. So, but yeah, I don't. It's probably one of the areas where I'm not mainstream liberal because I just, because I'm trying for consistency here in my arguments. So, some of the early scribes would change things in the Gospels to fit particular belief agenda, whatever group they want. That is also true. Bart Ehrman makes a very excellent point there. Um, a good example, two good examples actually, are the addition of the woman caught in adultery in John And the other good example is the longer ending of Mark, because the longer ending of Mark is taking like what the other gospels said and kind of adding it on in a summary form. So it's, you know, it's that aspect of it. So you're very much onto something here, because I also think that the reason the four gospels were picked was they lined up with a certain theology that the people already had. And the other, I don't know, there's 33 of them, other gospels of Jesus, didn't have that theology, or were more Gnostic in their theology, or some other group, and didn't fit what people already perceived Jesus to be. And so what you have is them not only editing the gospels to fit a certain perception, but also picking certain gospels because of that perception. So good question. I've asked that question similar ways. I mean, it's like, one of the things that comes up when you look at the gospel narratives and Acts is there's a guy who needs to be healed of his lameness at the temple gate, beautiful, where Jesus walked by probably how many times? Okay. Why didn't he do that to them? And it becomes, well, you know how I feel about the term transphobe. So you know how I feel about that. I don't use it for that reason. I think it assumes too much, and it's nothing more than name calling at this point. So, Jesus knows literary that people use in the Gospels, which was a literary genre. The only thing that must be contained is and what comes after. Yeah, so there's that. Hey, Iron, good to see you. Yeah, that's why everybody knows that it's an addition. Okay, this is late like second century, early third century theological development. Okay, so when you look at all the things in the longer ending of Mark, it's clear that whoever's added that is summarizing and stating their own personal beliefs at the same time. Okay, and so that's that. So that's why we know it's a longer ending, and plus the fact that the early texts don't have it on there at all. Yeah, but that's kind of the issue. It's I would there's a reason why we don't let kids buy alcohol. I mean, hell, we wait in the United States. You have to be 21 to buy alcohol. Okay, you have to be 18 to smoke, and you have to be 18 to use weed. In some places, you have to be 21 in some places to use weed. So we have all these, when their brain is fully developed, they're better able to make a decision. Laws on the books already. So yeah, I agreed. Context is part of consistency, but you know, I I'm of the opinion that you really need to let a person gain their full mental faculties, and 18 to 25 seems to be where that solidifies, and that's a better time for people to make decisions that are going to affect the rest of their life. Okay, but it's like that. That's the issue. They're not permanent, but they also have now been shown to do damage. There's a reason why Europeans have now banned them. Okay, puberty blockers are no longer on the docket in Europe, as far as I know, because of some of the problems associated with them. Puberty is more than about sexual characteristics. There's other things that develop in puberty that you're also blocking, and it seems like whenever we fuck with natural evolutionary development of a human being, we end up fucking something up. So yeah, it's not a medical requirement either. Well, because that gets back to the original topic, doesn't it, Mighty Filbert, of the presuppositionalist apologist? Because he presupposes his faith is true, and I have to prove it false to him. Okay. I think that's I I think it's interesting that when we bring up problems, they run back. I think that's an interesting point. They run back to their emotional connection to their faith, and that's why I think, in large part, why presuppositionalist apologetics is rising. So there's that aspect of it. So it can be difficult to deal with human beings. Okay, I'll just put it that way. I've been running this channel for 5 years, and I get that accusation all the time. You're just not interpreting correctly. You're taking it out of context. I'm like, you know, dude or lady, I have been studying this thing since I was 8. Okay, I've read it, so so there's that. I don't know where he grew up. Yeah, sometimes. But what is premature puberty, and how do we define that? Okay, seems like a value judgment. I mean, it would be argued because Ed here, when all of his other friends who were in 5th grade were interested in frogs and all the other stuff, he was checking out the backsides of his female teachers instead. Did I have premature puberty, or was it just early? you know, most of my friends in 5th grade thought girls had cooties. I did not. So, yeah, yeah, nobody can agree. That's the problem. And it seems like a work of an omniscient, omnipotent God wouldn't have this ability to question it or have interpretive elements to it. I think that's the biggest problem that I try to get across to theists is, and the problem I had as a theist is like, this can be taken so many different directions. How can I show the evidence that this is written by a God who can clearly, if he's true, cover all the bases? And he should be able to cover all the bases, but he doesn't. Yeah, I mean, so were you premature going for puberty there, Rimmer? Okay, should they given you puberty blockers to stop that? I don't know. Seems like a natural order of things. And yeah, and that's the problem. Once again, we're in the nebulous territory if it's a bit different for everybody. So, but the law and the way society works, we have to make hard and fast rules because the moment you start making exceptions, then everybody wants one. So I don't know. It's a complicated issue. I don't claim to know everything about it, and somebody can always correct me if they got better information. But I know for a fact that like a lot of European countries started with puberty blockers, pulled them. Now maybe they've reinstated them since, but I know that they've had a lot of issues with it. So, and the idea that they were completely medically safe at the outgo has been challenged by data now. So it's like I said, when you consider it, there's more to puberty than sexual development characteristics. There's mental development, there's other stuff. So what are you are you just blocking the sexual characteristic development or everything? That becomes a problem. Well, shit, Rimmer, you're ahead of me. But I do remember that when I was in 5th grade, um, and my school, the 5th grade was in its own building. Like we were way away from any elementary or high school or anything. We had our own building for just 5th graders. And I remember my friends thinking that girls had cooties still. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think so. I kind of like them, and the first time I ever noticed it really strongly was when I was in my reading class because my reading teacher was like 24 years old and a hot blonde. And yeah, I kind of noticed her. So, and I was, 10, 11. So, um, yeah, that's the problem. There's another problem. Hey, Dave, good to see you. Captive Desk, another great channel. I appreciate the. Are you guys still talking about toasters, though? I want to know if you're still talking about toasters. So that's all I want to know. the story there is gosh, this is Saturday, I think. I was watching them. They were reacting to this guy, and the guy's talking about toasters and everything else. And we're all laughing about it. I go off, I do my own live stream for an hour and 15 minutes reacting to a video. I come back, and Dave and company are still talking about toasters. so, so I don't know. It was hilarious to me. Yeah. God is not the author of confusion. It seems very confusing to me. Yeah, any medical procedure needs to be constantly reviewed. Any drug needs to be constantly reviewed, uh, because you're always getting new data. Now, if somebody can prove to me that they're not completely harmful, or lacking any harm, then I just have a problem with parents making the decision about the gender of their child instead of the child, and whether the child has the ability to make that decision. You know what I'm saying? I also still am waiting for good evidence on, because I hear the claim all the time that gender is a social construct. I would like to see the research on that and demonstrating that it's purely grade A, nothing other than a social construct. I don't know if any of the research concludes that hard. So, and I know a claim from evidence for a claim. I've been doing this channel for a while. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the problem with a lot of us assholes, many of us went through this. All our friends hated girls, but we didn't. So there's a lot of us. And I think all of us were lying about hating them. So, oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, sometimes. Well, I don't know. I do it sarcastically. So, the issue for me is you're going to deal with people that don't have no. I'm always following the evidence, and I don't. Let me put it this way: if I'm going to be critical of a theist and say that they've given me a claim but they haven't given me any evidence, if an atheist also gives me a claim and doesn't give me any evidence, I have to point that out to be consistent. Okay. And a lot of us are talking about our past, okay, because that's just the way we were brought up. Okay. I think the problem I have with like younger generations judging older ones is like, you're not going to change the older generations. They were raised a certain way. And guess what? In about 20 years, younger generations are going to come under the same criticism by younger generations. This is a constant flow society thing. And I am fully willing to change my viewpoint on anything if somebody gives me the evidence for it. But asking for evidence, I don't think is black and white thinking. Okay. I don't think that's black and white. Black and white would be saying it's either this or that. And I'm not saying that. I'm giving like 20 different alternatives here. There's a lot of stuff there, but well, you have to. You're going to revisit the toaster guy? You call them. Oh, so you got some of those. All right. Well, you're going to revisit the toaster guy. Oh, damn. You know what's really upsetting to me, Dave, is I wanted so bad to grab an emoji of a piece of toast or a toaster from YouTube to put it on there. And you know what they don't have? They don't have an emoji of either one of those. I was very, very upset. So, yeah, I know. I get it. Okay. I'm dealing with the moral, societal, ethical issue of, do parents have the right to make those kind of decisions for their kids, or should we wait until the kid has the faculties to make that decision for themselves? I think we're presupposing a lot on our children and what they would want. I mean, I'm sorry, the point could be made that young children don't even know what they want. They want, they all want to be firemen and doctors when they're 7. do they really have a really good understanding of gender themselves in order to make that decision for themselves at that point? No. And so this is the moral. I'm using the exact same argument I would use for circumcision or calling a child a Christian. That's a Christian kid. Well, he hasn't made a decision about Christianity. He's got to wait for that. Okay. Do these children have the ability to consider the decision? Okay. That's the issue. So, and that's a social political issue for me. So, yeah. Yeah. He's done some stupid things already. Yeah. I've heard that about you, so. Oh, wait, that's the Bible. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, but that's not the point I'm making. Okay. The point I'm making is, does a child have the ability to make these decisions for themselves? Okay. And then should a parent be making that child for them, or some other guardian may making that without their consent? Okay. You are altering a human being's body with these medical drugs. Okay. You are changing them. So if I take that view on circumcision of, you shouldn't be cutting off a child's body against their consent, just because you are, as a parent, are a certain way and think a certain way. I think can feel about any medical procedure that way. Okay. It's one thing for a parent to make a decision to save the life of their child. It's quite another to alter the life of a child without their consent. Okay. Consent's a big thing for me. And I don't think, a 7-year-old child has enough understanding of what gender even is to even make that call. Okay. And so I don't think it's something that they should be allowed to make a call on. That's not going to happen. I love you, Lisa, but I prefer to talk about things that are going to happen. Okay. What is going to happen is Trump's not going to get much done these first 2 years because his own party is going to fight with him. That's what's going to happen. So, yeah, that's the other question, because sometimes these gender decisions, the parents make a choice for a certain gender, then later on the child says, I really don't want to be that. You can't know what's going on in your child's brain or what they would want. Okay, so so there's that. As a non-American, Martin can't. Oh, I get that, dude. I get that exists and that puberty blockers are used for that. I get it. Okay, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, that can happen, but it doesn't change the fact that, once again, you still have a variance in when people go into puberty. That's also a fact. Okay, so I absolutely know the evidence that you're talking about. I've looked at it before. Okay, my conclusion about it is you're still making a value judgment. Okay, what is to, obviously, from a biological genetic point of view of that individual, is it early? Okay, there can be some consequences. I don't doubt that, but we're not talking about using it for a medical procedure. We're talking about it in the context of people using it to control what they think the gender of their child should be. And that's somebody making a decision for somebody else. This isn't about medical procedures. This is about a social issue. Okay. I would like to see a toast emoji. Yeah, I would outlaw circumcision as well. Um, but I already know the medical information about pre-existent puberty, why puberty blockers were created in the first place. I already know that stuff. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, is it morally right for a parent to make a decision about the gender of their child without the child's consent? And can the child actually make a consent? That's my issue. Okay, that's the question before us, and that's a much more sticky issue. So, but that, once again, dude, I read that report. I looked up. I can't. If I looked at all the links, I've been looking at this issue for a long time and the medical puberty blockers for a while, and it's not 100% like all medical procedures. And two, I can see your point, but that's not what I'm talking about. I am asking the question, is it morally right for a parent to make this decision for their child? If it's not about this, if it's not about premature puberty, it's just about controlling the sex of the child, is that right? Okay, that's the question I'm asking. I'm not shifting the goalposts at all, dude. I'm asking a moral question. Is it right for parents to make this decision? If it's not about medical, okay, I'll grant you the medical thing. But if it's not about the medical, I've said the same thing over and over and over. If it's about the parents simply, I don't want my kid to have gender or whatever, okay, and is that right? Is it right for the parent to make that decision? If I say circumcision is bad because it's a parent making a decision for a child that the child should be allowed to make later, I can say the same thing about puberty blockers. Okay. I've read the medical information about people entering puberty too early, but once again, too early is a value judgment. What do you mean? How do you determine that? Okay. So, yeah, but that's just it. I'm drawing a parallel here. Okay. If, and I'm not talking about if we're dealing with a medical issue, sure. Okay. Whatever. But that's not what's happening a lot with these puberty blockers. You have parents making decisions about, I'm going to block my kid's gender. So supposedly they can decide about it later, but that has physiological effects too. So, yeah, you also have the issue of hermaphrodites. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, except once again, what is the motivation? To me, I always look for the motivation. If the motivation is I genuinely think that there's something medically wrong with my kid and this can help, go for it. But if the issue is I have this certain social agenda view of mine as a parent, that's no different than somebody have a religious agenda to me. Okay. And I wanted to play that out in my children. Yeah, I have a problem with that. Okay. I'm just saying that if you want to engage in these trans discussions, I hope that the person that's being considered has some say in it and they have an understanding and an informed consent about what they're doing. Okay, this is the argument. Okay. I'm not sure in all cases. It depends on in the United States. It probably depends on the state. I think but you also, just because somebody's an MD doesn't mean that they don't have a political agenda with it either. So, but I could see somebody if going into puberty is generally causing problems for the person's health, then yeah, sure, use them. But I've read that research, but that's not the issue that usually comes up. It's kind of like people talking about abortion in the context of, well, if it saves the life of the woman, well, that's not the majority of what I'm sorry, I have to agree with the pro-lifers. The majority of times that abortion is used it's just a woman says, I'm not ready to be a mother, which is, to me, is a perfectly legitimate reason to get an abortion. But they always bring up these exceptions and stuff like that. And I'm looking at the mainstream of how something is used. And that's a different aspect. Yeah, this is also painfully true. is you have one parent that wants the kid to trans and you have the other parent that doesn't. And so now you have two parents fighting over it and the kids don't get a say about it. And that's the problem I have. Okay, I think if you're going to affect the life of a child that much, they should be the ones that make that decision when they're older and can understand the decision. Are you sure? Mm, I've raised three children, and I'm going to tell you there's a certain point. I mean, it's like you're asking them, literally in some cases, to cut off parts of their body. We repulse at that when it comes to circumcision, but also at some point we're going to say it's okay for kids to make that decision when they're 5, 6, 7 years old. Having raised three children now, okay, they're not ready to make a lot of decisions about their life. Okay. But at the same time, I don't want to force decisions that are life changing for them on them. Okay. I don't think it's universal. It's a specific medical condition. So yeah, except the problem with circumcision, you also have MDs that agree that it should be done. I've literally had doctors say that it's a viable medical procedure because it prevents a lot of problems. So you have MDs on that side. So I'm not sure that makes your difference because I've literally heard MDs say that circumcision was a viable medical procedure, and we're talking medical doctors. So possibly. I try to bring in, people's choices should be their own, but maybe that's my libertarian leanings. Uh, yeah. Is the child involved in the decision is a good question, though, because I know how parents can dominate children. I've seen it. It's very easy. And I'm sorry, I see the correlation between religious indoctrination, and sometimes social and political indoctrination is the same. So, good to see you, left-handed Jedi. I know you're here somewhere. Yes, there you are. Oh, I can always be wrong. I'm always studying. The one thing about learning things is you're constantly learning. That's why I don't get after people for having controversial views, because it might be part of their learning process. They're trying to come to terms with it. Uh, I would say if you're looking at puberty blockers in heavy areas like South America, I don't think so. Um, I think there's a reason why some South Americans come to the United States so they can have access. Um, uh, that might be true according to you, but not according to the MD. Okay. And that's the problem, because I can get you an MD, a divided MD opinion on just about every medical procedure, because they're, being true scientists, they're always trying to disprove each other. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen it. But you also, I mean, I'm fairly certain the Middle East doesn't have discussions about trans and puberty blockers other than what form of death to give them. Yeah. So, um, but sorry, MDs, you can say they're disqualified, but they still got their credentials and they're saying you're wrong. Okay. So that's the thing, Michael. It's like, even in medical science, you got to remember there's this constant ebb and flow of what's right and wrong. And there's a lot of people that back circumcision as a medical justified procedure. That was my mother's reason for doing it to me, was the medical research at the time. Okay. And that's the problem. A lot of this medical research is time locked. So, Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's just we know that we know a lot about brain development and when somebody is moving, because you talked about black and white thinking. The problem with black and white thinking is children have it in spades. They think of things in very black and white terms. You don't get really nuance and understanding and stuff like that until you hit 11 or 12 in general. Okay. So that's when that starts to get there. So I don't know that a child can make that decision about themselves with any good sense that they know everything completely the way they need to know it. But yeah. Yes, exactly. It's the question is whether it should be forced on kids. Should this be done to children by their parents and authorities and not wait until later in life when they can make the decision themselves? So, well, yeah. I mean, I'm all for mental health, but I don't know. I've also heard people, you know, who have gone through trans come out of it not for religious reasons and cite mental health as the reason they went into it. It's a very complicated thing. There's a reason why trans people get counseling for a great length of time, and rightly so, because you have to make sure that this is something they want to do, because it is a very permanent decision. Okay, so it's something that I support all trans people in their right to transition. I have very libertarian reasons, if we can do it, then do it. But I also think that they should be old enough to make that decision and make the decision well. And what old enough is a hard decision. I'll grant you that. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you got to remember, Michael, that we're dealing with the United States and a lot of stuff is all over the place. Medical research can be done by anybody as long as they follow the rules. And so, this is, I think, the great concern with our current person. On the one hand, I'm kind of glad for our new Food and Drug Administrator, because I think the FDA has been way too draconian in who gets contracts to do medical stuff. Like, they'll literally create monopolies. This is the only company that's going to be allowed to do this. And then they don't farm it out to other people. There's a lot of rules that are stupid in the FDA. But at the same time, this guy's going to allow all kinds of ideas and notions to go across. So America's kind of weird like that. But you got perfectly good MDs that'll tell you that circumcision is a valid medical procedure, in the United States in particular. So yeah, I know that. Okay, but I also know that you can avoid suicide attempts. Puberty blockers might be the answer, might not be. Okay. But if you're trying to rush a decision, that can be bad too. Okay. We can play this game all day long where I can argue all sides against the middle. But the point is, it's absolutely necessary to have that type of counseling. At what point can a person understand the counseling? Okay. Because having raised kids, there's a lot and been involved in kids' development. It's like there's only certain things that a child can understand at certain ages. And there's a reason why educators introduce certain things at certain ages, because now they realize the brain development has gotten to a point where they can understand it. This is, to me, what your gender is for the rest of your life is a pretty major decision. And maybe we should hold off on that for some of that's used until the person can make a decision for themselves. So, yeah. Uh, uh, yeah, there's no additional benefit after childhood. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There is medical research out there that talks about the benefits of circumcision versus non-circumcision. Um, so there's that aspect of it. I'm not really sure if anybody's done the same with female circumcision, though. If there's any medical benefit, I don't think there is. No, I don't think you're saying that either, Evan. I'm just saying that I also know that there's a lot of parents that are pushing this on their kids because of a political agenda, not necessarily that they feel their kid is going through the problems you're indicating. Okay. They have they're inside the, upper echelon, white liberal kind of people, and that's kind of how they act. And that's been called out by other liberals too, by the way, not just me. Yeah, that's I kind of figured. Okay. But the only medical benefit I could see for a male circumcision is the infection thing, which is why my mother said she did it to me. It's like still cutting off a part of my body without me saying if it was okay or not. Okay. So, yeah, that should be banned everywhere. Yeah. I think that's the issue. It, They're definitely, I think all of us are in agreement here that therapy is important, supervision is important, expert opinion is important. I'm just pointing out that the child's opinion has two problems. Did they actually give their opinion, or is this an agenda by the parents? Or are they capable of understanding the decision? Okay. You know, I, the one thing I learned in education is there's a reason when kids get to a certain grade, there's a reason why we only introduce certain topics at certain times, and it's because of brain development and the ability to understand. It seems to me that gender is one of those very complicated issues that is going to take a lot of understanding before somebody can make a genuine informed decision about it and have the long-term therapy and all that other stuff. And so that's where I have a problem with puberty blockers just being used like that. Okay. It's like, is this a medical issue or is this an agenda? Okay. So your mom taught you how to clean yourself. Yeah. That's a problem. I think when I look at women in America who advocate for circumcision, it really is about their convenience. Okay. And they don't have a problem. It makes me wonder about some women because they don't have a problem hacking off male body parts, so to speak. Makes me scared of them. Yeah. Oh, man. Too bad for her. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think we were more in agreement. We're kind of passing each other. Call it a communication issue. I mean, I'm very much for therapy before you make any kind of major decisions like this. And can a 5 to 7 year old child have therapy about it and understand it if it's just for quote unquote social reasons? Okay. I'm not sure they can. Okay. I've raised kids, my kids, all three of them had similar characteristics of there were certain times that I couldn't introduce certain concepts to them because I just knew they wouldn't understand it. They don't have the understanding. I see it in my grandkids too. It's like the different ages, that's my issue. Are you going to give these out like candy to any parent that wants them to block the puberty of their child? I don't think that's a good idea. Okay. And it's the same with any medical procedure. You've got to have, yeah, it's where, I will give the chat this kudos, guys. We're talking about this and we're being civil. Okay. We may disagree strongly. We may have strong emotions about it, but we're not going to get to the truth and we're not going to get to a central core of a better understanding by getting all angry about it and just screaming. I think that's the issue. And this is where, see, me and Skeptically Piss are kind of on the same page here. They need to wait till the kids' brains are developed so they can understand the choices they're making. It's for life. Okay. And, it, we don't let them pick what they want to eat for a reason sometimes, you know. I mean, and this is the thing, guys. We love everybody here. Okay, I really do. I like the fact that we have diverse opinions because it really helps the discussion. I don't want this to be an atheist echo chamber. Okay, I really don't. It always has that danger. But I have people from all over the political spectrum who are also atheists that follow this channel for the very reason I keep it very open. I'm not here to dictate to you. What I would like to hear is a lot of good discussion. This is a good discussion. Okay, I learned a lot. Okay, I knew about the medical research for the prepubescent people. I just wasn't sure it applied to the question at hand. So, no, there's that aspect. Yep. And you know what, Michael, I think teenagers are very capable of understanding a decision if that's like if this is the focus of your life, am I the right gender? At this point in your life, then yeah, I think you can digest as a teenager all the information you need to know and make that decision. I have a large problem with anybody under 10. Okay, um, so it's like I enjoy. Yeah, they're boring. And this hasn't been a boring discussion. It's been an interesting one. And I think, all of us now have some things to think about, including me. Okay. I'm constantly evolving my thoughts. Okay. And I think sometimes the problem is, with black and white thinking is sometimes you have to go that direction to, okay, what if it's this choice and that choice, knowing full well there's 12 other choices. So, but it helps generate some discussion. Okay. Yeah, it's a valid question. Actually, it's kind of a valid question. I'm very happy being male. So, and some kids take longer for their brains to develop. So you really have to do the therapy. And part of the therapy should be, is this person old enough to make this decision? Are they, is there all the information they need and the ability to think about it? Yeah, the atheist experience, the problem with a lot of those big channels, I wish Earl was here because she's had her bad experiences with them too. They are very echo chamberish. Okay. They don't want to have these discussions. And I'm not going to do that here. I'll probably get ostracized for it and get badmouth for it. But I think the trans issue needs to have a debate and a discussion, and both sides need to be respected enough to present their information. And if we come out with something that, maybe gender isn't purely biological and isn't purely a social construct, but somewhere in the middle, which I think most people dwell on, that block, I think you would get there. Yeah, it's Dagobah Dave's got it. I think there's a lot more science that's needed here. And that's the thing. You have to use the puberty blockers to find that out. And finding kids that are willing to consent to that and be fully informed in that consent to do that research is really a problem. But yeah, my problem with the atheist experience, the problem with the line, and if they ever invite me to show up there, I would tell them no. Okay. Is I do feel that those individuals that run those channels have a very emotional attachment to certain viewpoints, and they don't want to discuss them. So they don't want to discuss the issue. They want to shut it down. That's why I don't use the term transphobe or homophobe. I think putting phobic on the end of anything is just name calling. It's like I can say they're anti-trans or pro-trans. I think that's a more accurate descriptor, but I don't see that all the reactions on both sides are completely irrational. Okay. There's rationality on both sides, and it needs to be found a way to bring it together. Yeah, I love Matt Dillahunty for a lot of things he's done in the past, but recently it's like he's taken one side in this, and it's just, I had a large problem with him apologize in a way that he wanted them to apologize. And I'm like, they're lawyers and they're covering their ass, okay, with their honorary members so they don't get sued by their honorary members. They had to do what they had to do. And, not being able to see the forest for the trees on that issue was kind of me. And, I have my problems with all the atheist commenters that do that. So think about it. I'm too old and ain't got time for that. Yeah. I mean, I had, my mom's a Christian. She was a good mom. Okay. So, I mean, I get you, Jova. I do. I think they're running their course. That's the problem, because it's pretty clear that their hosts have an agenda, which is fine if you state that up front. Okay. But if you're trying to get to the truth, I've got to allow some people. I allow theists here to come and talk because I don't think it's honest as an atheist not to let them. Okay. I mean, and I think a lot of what I see from the line and the atheist experience is they're waiting for the soundbite that you can put up as a video of, yeah, look at, we made this guy look like an idiot again. And it's like, I'm not trying to make theists look like idiots. Okay. I have more respect for their humanity than that. Okay. I used to be one. I am trying to get them to see something on their own. And that's a different, you have to be much more gentle than they are. And that's hard sometimes. I get it. Yeah, I mean, we all could use some more information, Evan. I assume. Yeah, he's starting to come off bitter. He didn't used to, but he's starting to come off as bitter and angry. He's starting. It's a feeling I'm starting to get that he's very angry at things, and he's angry at the atheist community in part. And that started. It's funny because him and the ACA had a tiff over political correctness, and now he's going after the same people the ACA went after. So it's kind of irony there, I guess. Discuss controversy. All that's left is fine. And this is the hallmark of a free society. Skeptically Pissed is the ability to talk about things without shooting each other, without pulling out knives, and being able to entertain an idea without actually holding it. Okay, is perfectly reasonable. Okay, I do that all the time and try to, some of you have probably noticed that I play devil's advocate from time to time. Not an issue, but it makes headlines and riles people up. Correct. You have that right. Oh, I think that's because Aaron Robren has focused on the science aspect and he still focuses on the creationist stuff. And when he does talk politics, he openly says he's just expressing his opinion and he knows that there are others out there. I know he doesn't have a lot of truck with like libertarian atheists. He doesn't agree with them, but he still allows them to talk and he will acknowledge when they make a good point. That's the real problem today. You can't be talking with an opponent and if they make a good point, say they made a good point, because then your whole team will push you towards the other side. Why are you taking their side? And it's like, that is not a good free society move. Okay. It just isn't. I agree. I think some kids are generally trans. We'd have to assume that. And there are some that are being, it's cool and it isn't easy to make that distinction. And when you bring up that nuance, the people quickly want to call you a transphobe. And I'm like, I'm just bringing up a point. Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing about dogmatism, isn't it? It always seems to bite us in the ass as a human race. Yeah. I mean, if you're a theist, I understand why theists do what theists do, and I don't get mad at them for it. If you have that belief system, yes, of course, this is the way you're going to act. So the issue is not their actions, it's their belief system. And when atheists concentrated on focusing on the belief system and why the belief system is wrong, we got a lot more headway. Now we're coming off as angry. And I used to reject that claim, but there's a lot of angry atheists out there. Okay. And the problem with that perception is then you're just acting in emotion against God and you're not thinking about it. And I would say, well, your presuppositionalist apologists kind of prove that you're acting on emotion and not acting on reason anymore either, too. So there you go. Yeah. Yeah, that's one report. See, that's the thing, Grumpy. There's a lot of reports. And I think sometime they're going to have to start compiling these and thinking, okay, what do we know? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's my consistency there. Hey, yeah, Gora, good to see you. Yeah, but it gets the sound bites and it gets the likes and it gets the views. Aaron Ross said it himself. He says, I do the science videos and they don't get as many views and stuff, but I still do them because I think they're important. He says, but I also do videos that get everybody's attention, so I get the views and the money. It's the problem with YouTube is it's always about sensationalism. Okay, nobody can have a decent discussion on social media anymore, and that's a big problem to me. I wish there was a good medical test to figure that out. I really do think that trans is going to prove itself through neurology. Okay, that there's something different about the neurology. Yeah, there's a lot of dogmatic atheists. So, and I try not to be one. I hope that's okay with everybody. I mean, like I'm listening to Evan tonight, and I'm like, you know what? I got some more things to look at and research, but I don't have time while I'm doing a live. So, and I got to cut this one short soon because it is past 7:30, and I do have to get ready for work. So, get something to eat and get ready, all my stuff ready before I head out the door. So, I want to thank everybody. It was a really good discussion. It was a passionate discussion. I appreciate that, but we all, nobody pulled knives, so we're all good. And I think we all still care about each other. So, it was a good night, and I appreciated the discussion. Thank you very much, Evan, Michael, all the rest of you, Gumphrey Librarian, Martin, all of you for showing up. As always, thank you all for being here. I appreciate this. This is Rapid Fire, where I answer all the burning questions, and it's a very open forum. So thank you for being here and participating. I love it, all of it. Thank you very much. But as always, live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, to people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do. Thanks, everybody, for being here. And I have to make a very late thank you to Jova Shade. Thank you. Yes, please hit the buttons on the way out. Appreciate all of you. And as always, thanks for stopping by, everybody, and I will catch you next time.